Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tim Moen Show. I hope you're doing well. I hope in spite of it all, in spite of the state sticking its grimy little tentacles into our business on day in and day out in every aspect of our lives, I hope you're doing fantastic. I hope you're finding a way to live free in an unfree world. Hey, we've got the WEF and Klaus Schwab pushing the Great Reset. We've got central banks brainstorming ways of locking their teeth even deeper into our lives, into our economic spending habits, saving our lives. And now they're talking about digital cryptocurrency, digital IDs, linking all that together. And it doesn't take very much imagination to speculate that this might be tied to what kind of an upstanding establishment citizen you are, what kind of social credit score you might have. But my guest today has got the answer to all this. It's going to fill us in on what's going on out there, what we ought to be alert to, and what solutions might be out there. And we have a guy who specializes in cryptocurrency. His name is Max Freeman. Max, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. That's a great introduction. I was taking some notes, so we'll definitely have a lot to cover. As you were talking, I was reminded of the Murray Rothbard concept of 3 types of state intervention into our lives. You know, you've got the price control, the prohibition, and grant of monopolistic privilege. And yeah, whether it's the WEF or the central banks or the captured regulators, you know, we're really seeing that it's as it ever was. He who has the gold makes the rules. You know, and institutions that have served us for decades and centuries, and you know, back to the founding of countries, are starting to, you know, behave in different ways that increasingly puts individuals at odds with groups of individuals who use violence, you know, to impose what they want on you know, the 2 wolves and a sheep, what's for dinner story. So yeah, I take them at their literal word when they say you will own nothing and be happy. And you know, I for one don't want to see what flavor of seasoning crickets and cockroaches are best eaten with.
Well, I mean, in all fairness, Max, you've seen the footage that's coming out of North Korea. They look pretty happy, don't they? I mean, they're all have smiles on their faces. They're talking about how happy they are. They're praising the great leader, and they own nothing. So maybe we
actually, you know what? It's fascinating because I was watching a YouTube documentary or BitChute or one of those places on North Korea recently. And North Korea has actually become kind of like a rogue, unsavory aspects of our world, you know, weapons trafficking and slavery and drugs and counterfeiting and stuff, outpost of China, sort of as Hong Kong has been the portal to the world, first under the British and now under the Chinese the past, you know, decade or so. And so North Koreans actually seemed really, really happy compared to 20 years ago, where it just looked Stalinist grim. They have electronics, they're driving BMWs. I mean, not everybody. There's still the peasants out in the hinterlands that are boiling bark to survive still, and the gulags and all that. But there's really a thriving capitalist free market, you know, weird aspect to North Korea, you know. And then you look at the European Union that's just banned owning crypto wallets over $1,000 worth of value. You're supposed to only have those under KYC exchange. And you're not supposed to use privacy enhancing technologies either. So that, you know, it reminds me of World War II when before liquidation of certain unfavored social groups in Germany occurred, they had to make lists of their property. And now something near and dear to my heart, if you have property on a transparent blockchain where other people can see what you have, that makes it much easier to take it. So there's really really a lot going on here to
Right.
unpack.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start unpacking some of this. I did not know that about Europe. And of course, you know, if you own crypto, you are you're by definition a dissident. You're an unsavory character. You are really an enemy of the state because you're opting out of the establishment system. You're opting out of the oligarchical central banking scheme of money and control, and you're trying to take your destiny into your own hands. So where do we start with all this? I mean, right now I see a lot of populists making a lot of noise about the digital ID and cryptocurrency that is being pushed by central banks. What is the problem with central bank currency? What is the problem with ramping it up to cryptocurrency? Isn't cryptocurrency good? And how does let's start there. What's the problem with this stuff?
Okay. Well, first, let's make sure that we're talking about the same things, because there's many types of distributed ledger technologies. It really gets important. You have to get into the weeds. It's really important on things like consensus protocols, proof of stake versus proof of work. There's also blockchains and block lattices and directed acyclic graphs and all kinds of different data structures. That seems like an abstract detail, but it really, really ends up being important in terms of who can play and who cannot play, and what third parties can do. So wherever possible, we'll define terms here. I wanted to just touch on one thing that you said earlier, which is that if you're using cryptocurrency, then you're opting out of the established system of control. And that used to be the case, but if you've seen the direction that the industry has gone, particularly over the past 5 years, largely as a result of Silicon Valley and Wall Street VC investment, is that it's meet the new master, same as the old master. So the number 2 cryptocurrency, Ethereum, moved to a consensus mechanism called proof of stake, on the grounds that it will provide environmental benefits and cost savings and capacity increases and all that stuff. And in time, maybe it will do that. But what they gave up, there's this thing called the blockchain trilemma: security, scalability, or decentralization. Pick 2. Epic, incidentally, the one that I like the best, solves that in a really elegant way. We'll get to that later. But Vitalik Buterin, the founder of Ethereum, admitted about 6 months ago that as a result of the change, Circle, which is owned largely by Goldman Sachs and is 100% aligned with the Federal Reserve and the US government, and is really just minting money from this favored, almost monopoly position within the crypto industry. I think they reported a $2.4 billion profit last quarter, I want to say. So that's kind of like the hand slipping in the glove. If you've got backdoor control over the direction of the future development of the Ethereum network, and that's coming straight from the horse's mouth of the guy that was on the cover of Time magazine last year, well, you've effectively ceded control of your digital fiefdom that you've created to the people in power, and it's in a way that not one in 10,000 crypto owners understands, because it's all about the price and the rah and let me mint this NFT, and isn't it cool that I've got a picture of a donkey and I just sold it for 25 grand, but fundamentally money is the most important thing that connects all of us. The largest company in the world by market capitalization is Apple, 2.3 trillion, and out of 8 billion of us, how many own Apple products? A billion? 500 million, 2 billion, something like that. Not everybody needs TikTok or Instagram or even the internet at all, but all of us need money. And so for something so important, it's really important that we understand that. And so if you're using crypto assets, and I hesitate to call them cryptocurrencies, because out of 22,000 assets on CoinMarketCap, only a few dozen, really, maybe even less than that, are actual currencies. The rest are assets that use blockchains to function, and they may be currency-like, but ultimately they're not trying to replace the dollar or the yen or gold or anything like that. So there are ways to opt out as much as possible to the established system of control. But if you look at the 1.1 trillion of current crypto market cap, about 99% of that is controlled by the powers that be.
Really?
So yeah. Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's because they found these back ways into the network, and they've kind of conglomerated servers power and different things like that.
Well, let me give you an example. So, the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, that regulates things like stocks and bonds and investment in the U.S.
Yeah.
They operate under the authority of the securities legislation from 1933 and 1934. And about 5 years ago, there was this great discussion. If you remember the ICO boom of 2017 and part of 2018, you had hundreds, thousands of startups that just would put out a white paper and then would raise money through random people around the internet. And the argument was that these things are not securities because they are basically fuel for decentralized networks. And so it's taken about 5 years for the industry to get to clarity on what is a security as it relates to digital assets and what not. And there was 32.8 billion of venture capital investment into blockchain in 2021. And that went into models that are more Web 2 than Web 3. So a lot of the biggest new entrants set up things like foundations. Ethereum has a foundation, Tezos has a foundation, Cardano has a foundation, or they're set up as for-profit companies like Avalanche, or the former remnants of the Libra empire. There's one called Aptos and Sui, based on the original Facebook code that got kind of spun out when the Libra project died. So all of these guys have a vested interest in working with the system because they're part of it rather than challenging it. And nobody has really had the courage to get back to the spirit of Satoshi of we want peer-to-peer, we want to preserve our freedoms, we want to be able to not trust anyone, we want to validate the blockchain on our own local device and not have to ask permission, and we ultimately want individual sovereignty over our financial affairs. And if you go to DNA of Bitcoin.info and read the original Satoshi white paper, it says that Bitcoin is supposed to be not digital gold that you buy through Coinbase and it just sits there until you sell it for a higher price and you view it as like a stock or a mutual fund. It's actually designed as a peer-to-peer electronic payments network. So imagine, PayPal, but without the $100 billion company controlling it that tells you what you can and can't say online. So it comes down to control, and a lot of networks that are decentralized, but not decentralized enough. If you can identify the people pulling the strings, then Gary Gensler has basically said absolutely everything, full stop, everything in the market is a security if it's not designed like the original Bitcoin is. And there's two networks that are viable contenders for survival in that post-Gensler era. One's called Bitcoin Core, and it's worth $450 billion. And another one's called Epic. That's what I think of as the best ideas of Bitcoin applied or updated to 2023 technology, competing against that, worth $16 million.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay. So what's wrong with the original Bitcoin then? Why is that not a
great question? Yeah. So let's start with scalability. So it is 2008 tech that can't be easily upgraded. You may have heard of something called the Lightning Network. This idea of layer 2, where you basically open up channels that don't use the blockchain. So like if Coinbase talks to Kraken exchange, then they basically set up a channel and they don't use the blockchain. They just settle up once a day or whatnot, kind of like an interbank clearing system. So they have an architecture that can't scale. It can only do 350,000 transactions per day. Epic can do 1.4 million, and within 5 years, we'll be doing 1+ billion. When BTC, Bitcoin Core, will still be doing the same 350,000, and all the scaling that they want to do happens on other layers. It's also very expensive. So transactions cost between $2 and $81 on average. And the first block, every block is 10 minutes. So Epic is a decade later tech. Epic is 1 minute right now. In 5 years, it'll be 10 seconds. And BTC is committed to a product plan that has them still at 10 minutes. In 2028, Epic will be pushing blocks every 10 seconds, and you only need one to confirm the transaction. BTC is 10-minute blocks, and you need about 30 minutes to confirm it, because it's not instant finality like BTC is. So Epic is potentially billions of transactions a day for a fraction of a penny, 10 to 100 times faster. A lot of people don't realize, if the orange coin goes from 25,000 to 100,000, people will be paying $100 fees to move it. Wow. So you're never buying coffee with that. The $1.25 a day folks in Africa are never going to use that. But the biggest thing is that there's no privacy. It's a poker game where everyone at the table can see everyone else's cards. So what happens is, in Canada, the trucker protesters raised $9.4 million through GoFundMe. And then they said, no, we don't agree with your politics, so we're not going to give them the money. They refunded the money, and then people turned to Bitcoin and other currencies and donated to these truckers. And then what happened was the Royal Canadian Mounted Police put out a bulletin that identified, I think it was about 100 people, something like that. You can find the PDF online. It's pretty well scrubbed, but it's still possible to find it out there. And said, hey, exchanges, if you have clients that are connected to any of these addresses, you need to freeze their funds. So people lost their bank accounts, they lost their jobs, they lost their homes, they lost their vehicles. People are persecuted under emergency powers laws for expressing their right to free speech. And that type of attack is not possible when you use a currency that can be operated anonymously and has privacy. Anonymity and privacy are related concepts, often conflated, but they're distinct if you get into the nuance of how they're different. But basically, there are no addresses in Epic to trace. If I want to send you a coin through Epic Pay, if you just go to Epic Pay on the App Store or Play Store, or download it from the epic.tech website through the APK or F-Droid or any of the other places. GitHub is another example. So my wallet talks to your wallet directly and handshakes. And the Block Explorer shows that a transaction happened, but it doesn't show the amount, it doesn't show the address. And also, our communication is shielded through something called Dandelion, or Dandelion ++, actually. So you're in Canada, I'm in Namibia, or wherever, and we do a transaction, but it pops up in Bangladesh and Peru, as an example. Yeah, so it preserves the ability of people to transact and communicate without anyone else being able to interfere. So we talked about speed, we talked about cost, also decentralization. If you want to run a node for the original Bitcoin, it's about 500 gigabytes, and Bitcoin Magazine published an article about Nigeria. The average cost to run a node for that in Nigeria is between $400 and $800, which is a ton of money for Nigeria. Why? Because it's 500 gigabytes of data. Epic is under 5 gigabytes of data. So it's 100 times more space efficient. That means you can run it on a really obsolete, cheap, low-end device. So because of that, there's Bitcoin Core nodes in 90 countries. There's nodes for Epic in 129. So it's more decentralized. It's also more energy efficient. So the entire Bitcoin Core network is pulling down electricity mining 100% of the time through environmentally harmful devices that can't be recycled and need to be replaced every 3 years, known as ASICs.
Right.
Epic uses a polyphasic proof of work approach that rotates through multiple algorithms, 2 of which are on standby and 1 is active. So on average, it's using 2/3 less power. And an attacker needs to get control of not 1, but all 3 algorithms, 51% of them, which if you imagine juggling 3 balls instead of 1 is much harder. So it's using less electricity with no cost to the environment in terms of e-waste and replacing $10 billion of capex every year. It puts the mining profits in individual people's hands. You could run it on your desktop computer and earn a passive income just by running the app. Pretty soon we'll take that to mobiles as well. Whereas BTC mining is dominated by industrial Wall Street financed conglomerates. So, you know, you can mine Epic at home, and it is predominantly mined at home because of the algorithms that we chose. But substantially 100% of Bitcoin Core mining is in industrial mega farms.
Right.
You know, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
So I was going to ask now, I want to make sure I've got my audience here with me. A lot of these people have only kind of tangentially heard of cryptocurrency. They're not sure what the fuss is all about, or what they might even have a negative view of crypto because of all the globalist crypto stuff coming down, trying to control us, right? And so I just want to bring them up to speed, and correct me if I'm wrong anywhere here, Max, but I was initially attracted to Bitcoin probably, I want to say 2010, 2012, somewhere around there. It was about $5 a coin, or maybe even less. $5 a coin. And I thought, well, you know what? Let me try to, I got $100 I can spend. I've heard that I've heard that this Bitcoin might go up to as much as $100. I understood the rationale behind it, that it's a currency that isn't connected to the central bank, that has all the similar properties to gold, in that there's only a certain amount of it that could ever be created. Therefore, you can't inflate it and rob my buying power by artificially inflating it. It's decentralized. Therefore, there's no central bankers or politicians that can fuck with it, that can rob me again of my buying power. I can send it across the world instantaneously. I can walk across borders with millions of dollars worth of the stuff in my brain by remembering like a 23 character sequence. And all these things made it really clear to me that, okay, this is the future. Central banks are going to inflate us. These fiat currencies have a shelf life. They eventually collapse. If I have all my money in Canadian dollars or US dollars or whatever the fiat dollar is that I'm holding on to, eventually the value of that thing is going to go to zero if I just have it sitting there in a vault or in a bank or something like that over time, as the central banks continue to rob me of my power. On the other hand, I could buy precious metals, but now I've got to have a safe to house them in. It's a pain in the ass to use them as currency because, how do you transport the stuff around? How do you move it? How can I buy something on Amazon or from, someone across the country very easily with it? So cryptocurrency made a lot of sense to me. And Bitcoin, again, it was $5. I had a hard time getting it back then. So I kind of gave up. I really wish I would have bought 20 Bitcoin back then, when it was that cheap. But that's the idea, right, Max? That it basically lets us, it gets our currency, my personal currency, out of the hands of the government and the central bankers, and puts it firmly in my hand. It's like buying gold in a sense. At least that was the idea.
Absolutely. I was just taking notes as you were talking. So that was a wonderful and elegant summation of the benefits of what cryptocurrency originally offered. And so you discovered BTC in 2010 or 12, and it was $5. And you saw how well that would have worked out for you. So shout out to buyepiccash.com. You can get for $100 right now. You can get 100 Epic.
Nice.
You talked about scarcity. So Epic right now has 15.8 million coins out, and BTC has 19.2. Okay. So Epic is about 25% more scarce than BTC. Now that's at the network layer, but you talked about precious metals. Are you familiar in the metals markets how the bullion dealers fractionally reserve their holdings? JP Morgan sells the same metal in Scotiabank. They sell it 10 times over to different people, right?
Yeah, I've heard this. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so there's something called the GATA, the Gold Action Trust Action Network, and they've sued all these guys, and it's been proven in court, and it's completely beyond dispute. The amount of metal that is sold every day on the futures markets is like 100 times annual mining production or something. I mean, it's just right. Paper markets are completely disconnected because nobody has to stand and deliver for the physical. Right. And it's actually that same thing in BTC, because what has the religion of Bitcoin become? HODL, right? Hold on for dear life. I buy this thing. If all I have to do is just hold it and I get rich. So is it money or is it currency? Currency is designed to flow. Money is designed to sit. JP Morgan quote, gold is money, everything else is credit. And so at the network, if you add up the number of coins on the network with all the nodes in 90 countries that are saying, okay, Alice has 1 coin, Bob has 7, and Tim has 12, then you look at how many, that's 19.2 million. But then if you go to your Binance statement and my Coinbase statement and your Gemini statement, and then this hedge fund that borrowed the coins from those guys, and you add up all the fractional reserve and rehypothecated BTC positions, there's actually relevant recent research from people that are involved in that industry, that there's between 44 and 50 million paper claims out there overhanging 19.2 million coins. So Epic is about 3 times more scarce at 1/25,000th the price. Why? Because it's only 3 years old.
Oh, did we lose you?
Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
Hello.
Yeah,
hello,
I got
hello.
You snapped out there for a second.
Hello. Sorry, hold on, mate. When I get a call, it craps out here.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you still. It's just
yeah, it's just I gotta get back on Bluetooth. But that's okay.
No worries.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Somebody called.
No problem. Okay. So my understanding, so, you know, the I guess critics of cryptocurrency will say, well, there's no intrinsic value there. It's not backed by anything, yada, yada. You know, of course, the Austrian economist in me says, well, all value is subjective. There's no intrinsic value to anything. There's only the value that an individual gives it, that he's willing to exchange for it. That's what
does oil have value? Sorry to interrupt, but does petroleum have value? Oil?
I guess it depends who you are and what you want to use it for, whether you think it has value or not, right? It certainly has no value.
In general, I mean, it has, like, I can't do anything with oil myself, right. But I know if I have a tanker full of oil, I can sell it to all kinds of people.
Someone's going to want it, yeah.
So, you know, this idea of intrinsic value, well, you know, nothing really has intrinsic value, because if I don't have enough food, but I have bars of gold and I have no way to transmute those bars of gold into food, and I still die, then that's pretty worthless. At that time, I need certain things more than other things. Yeah. So it is highly subjective, and it is situational and very dynamic. But I would say that value in this case comes from utility. So if I have a tanker full of crude oil, I can turn it into jet fuel, into gasoline, into diesel. I can make plastics. I can make pharmaceuticals. I can do all kinds of stuff with it. And so it has value as an input, as raw material into the creation of other things. Also, another way to determine value is why has gold held value at a relatively steady rate for 6,000 years? 1 ounce of gold, $1,800, will buy a fine men's suit today, and it would have bought a toga apparently in Roman times. And why? It's because the amount of labor and energy and capital resources that it takes to get gold out of the ground and refine it largely over time tracks the cost of energy. If you look back at the 1970s and the price of oil and all the wars and supply shocks and stuff, it kind of averages out. And so because the value of gold, or the supply of gold, is elastic but not too elastic, it can only grow at about 2% per year. Just as a thought experiment of why BTC has been better, and Epic is at least so far much better, is because you have an inelastic supply function in response to price than an elastic one. And what I mean by that is, if the price of gold goes from $1,800 to $3,600 tomorrow, then people will mine more gold. They're going to melt down jewelry and dental fillings, and they're going to go pan in rivers, and they're going to work 24-hour shifts at the mine instead of 16 hours, and order more equipment and stuff.
And they'll increase the supply, and then the price will go down and stay.
Yeah, if it finds an equilibrium. The market can respond and will respond to the increased demand signal of higher price with increased supply. But in the case of early Bitcoin, back when it was a more supply hard thing than today, as the fractional reserve and rehypothecation has taken root, you have this order of magnitude logarithmic phenomenon where it goes from 1 cent to 10 cents to $1 to $10 to $100 to 1,000 to 10,000. And then on the most recent run, BTC got up 69% of the way through that $100,000 level. And that's because, as no matter how high the price goes up, the mining difficulty adjustment, the rate at which the coins come out, is immutable and fixed ahead of time at the genesis of the network. So, for example, today there's 5,760 Epic coins that come out per day, and there's 840 BTC coins. In about 3 months, the Epic emission gets cut in half from 5,760 to 2,880, and BTC has its next halving next year from 840 to 420. So because it constantly gets more difficult to mine, and remember, it takes a tremendous amount of electricity to secure these networks, and there's currently 20,000 computers competing on the Epic network for that drip feed of coins. I don't know what the equivalent number is in BTC, but I know it's a lot. Is because it constantly gets more expensive to produce the new coins, that produces or increases the value and protects the value of the existing coins that have already come out. Right, because you have this idea of stock to flow. So because you have a hard limited supply of only 21 million, and there can never be any more. Even in the case of Bitcoin Core, they probably can't crank that beyond 100 million. In the case of Epic, it'll stay at that 20 level because the way we're set up, that's not really going to happen to us, or at least as much. So you've got a system that protects your value better and also preserves your ability to operate. So getting back to CBDC, central bank digital currency, what that is those are currencies that are controlled by the central banks. So they are not cryptocurrencies at all. That's comparing apples and orangutans. They have nothing to do with each other, even though they're often confused. You talked about money with a shelf life. So as it happens in China with the e-yuan, they already have that. When you issue, or when they issue you the currency, it'll expire in 60 days. Or you have however long to spend it. So imagine back during the pandemic, they gave people $1,200. So instead of that being able to sit in your bank indefinitely or under the mattress, it expires worthless after a while. Also, you won't be able to buy stuff that they don't want you to. So no donating to Canadian truckers. No alcohol, no tobacco, no firearms, no this, no that. So now the state is in your wallet, and the central bank is constantly robbing you. How? Through negative interest rates, bail-ins, bailouts, capital controls. No, you can't send money to Australia anymore. You can't buy stuff from America if you're in Canada, or vice versa. Also capital controls. So, oh, we have a balance of payments crisis. So now you can only send $1,000 a month overseas or whatever. Lebanon just reduced the value of its currency 90% overnight. Think about that. 90%. I mean, they're just burning down bank buildings in frustration. So basically, you have third parties that are able to tell you what you can and can't do with your money and arbitrarily expropriate that value from you. Whereas in the case of Epic, nobody controls the code. It was immutable, set in stone at the beginning, and nobody can change it. In the case of Ethereum, the number 2 cryptocurrency, you basically have Wall Street controlling it. The powers that be have kind of, adopted that as their research and development playground, and they're firmly in control. And in the case of BTC, a company called Blockstream that's affiliated with the Bilderbergers and WEF types. I think it's AXA Insurance and Henry DeCastries and so forth. Back in 2014, this company called Blockstream got $140 million VC investment from those guys. And they're the ones that have been driving the agenda in a less harmful direction from the perspective of powers that be, taking it away from Satoshi's original vision. And so how that happens is they control the updates to the code, and they set the agenda at conferences. And it's like permission to speak, sir. No, denied. Right. We don't contemplate those ideas here.
Okay, so Epic Cash has solved a lot of these problems, but like you said, okay, first of all, the value of a cryptocurrency, to my mind, relies heavily on its adoption by the general public as currency, right? We know it has utility, we know it has all the things that gold does, but for example, if no one has ever heard of gold, gold is, even though it has all this utility intrinsic in it by its physical nature and by the laws of reality and physics, we can't use it. It doesn't have that much value because I can't use it as currency. So similarly, whatever cryptocurrencies emerge as currencies, the ones that will be most valuable, in my estimation, will be the ones that are most widely adopted. So, of course, Bitcoin has brand name right now. It was the first mover in this market, but it's got all these problems that you point out. So I want to move into something else. And that might be Epic Cash. But like you said at the start, I think you mentioned there's something like 20,000 different digital products that could be construed by the average browser of these things as cryptocurrencies, but they're actually not. So what sets Epic Cash apart? Why would I want to get involved in this and place a bet that this is the one that's going to take off and be the one that's going to become valuable?
Okay, so let me talk about adoption first, and then let me talk about why Epic is I believe best positioned as the one that's going to get that adoption. I would encourage you after the show to download the Epic Pay wallet and DM me.
You know what? I downloaded it while we were talking, so I have an Epic wallet ready. I got a wallet here ready to go.
You know what? Okay, then shoot me your address on Telegram, okay. And once we get done chatting here, we'll see if we can get that to send. Okay. But basically, Epic enables you to pay anyone, anywhere, anytime, any amount, any reason, in a minute or less for under a penny, privately, and nobody can stop you. So of those 22,000 assets, there are about 10 that have that privacy feature. So that's number one. That's vanishingly rare. And why is that? Because if you introduce privacy, you've usually introduced all kinds of other design compromises, where you have this thing that's private, but is so unusable in other ways that it can't get any traction. So I mentioned the market cap of Epic is $16 million. The market leader that has confidential transactions is called Monero XMR. That came out in 2014, and it uses an older type of privacy technology called crypto note. I won't get too technical because your audience is not into that type of stuff, but Epic uses a 2019 tech called Mimblewimble, or actually 2023 tech, because we keep updating it. And so Epic today is $1, not if, but when we match the market cap of Monero, that puts one Epic at $175 a coin. So that's 175 times where we are, and that's not driven by manic speculation. It's driven by the simple economics of how much data you can send through the network. We have a lot greater scalability. That chain would be, first of all, they're 2.5 minutes, and they can't really make it that much faster, and it's single algorithm. We're 1 minute, so 60% faster, and polyphasic or multi-algorithm. It's just basically, 2019 tech, 2023 tech is better than 2014 tech, and we've got a lot more room to grow. So there's only a few that have that privacy feature. Also, the limited supply. So if you look at Cardano, I think it's the number 10 network or number 15 or something like that. I think it's $30 billion. It has 45 billion maximum supply. So 45 billion versus 16 million. Other networks have supplies of quadrillion or trillions. Ethereum is infinite supply. There's no cap. It just keeps growing forever. Yeah. And they can change it. The developers of Ethereum have changed the emission multiple times. So they can do whatever they want. You've got a group of guys that can just, today we're going to do this. And they do. And they don't always make the right choices. Whereas Epic and Bitcoin Core are set in stone. So you've got what's a property that's known as immutability. And why is that important? Because that makes sure that nobody can mess with you. Nobody can arbitrarily compromise your rights that you you thought you had when you were getting into the thing.
Yeah, I mean, you've essentially eliminated the ability to counterfeit money, right? Like what they're doing with Ethereum sounds very similar to what the Romans did with their coins back in the day, which is dilute it with lead or whatever. And so that they could print more coins
and shave them down shave them down. That's the origin of the ridges on the side of the coin.
Right.
Another thing in terms of control that a lot of people don't know is because so Epic, why is Epic better? So Epic is mined on 3 different algorithms. One is called RandomX. So if you've got a laptop or a desktop PC or a server, pretty soon it'll be even a mobile phone. 48% of the time, those ordinary computers, of which there are billions out there, are taking their turn securing the network. For another 48% of the time, the graphics cards, so the people that play games and do video rendering and protein folding and stuff, they have idle capacity when they're not running jobs. They can be earning passive income running this blockchain and earning a share of those new coins that are created every day and those fees. When the one algorithm is active, the other 2 are on standby, not consuming any power. So it's also very green. It's also future-proofed because quantum computers are on the horizon, and we already have an algorithm called dilithium crystals. It's a lattice-based encryption scheme or algorithm design that protects against quantum computing, or at least it's more quantum resistant, we say. Nobody really knows how quantum computing is going to impact stuff. We know it's going to be bad, but not how bad. And we've already taken steps to protect against that. And that's not really possible on if you have a propeller plane, a Cessna with one engine in the front and something goes bad, then you have a real problem. If you have a jumbo jet with 4 engines and you can swap one out on the fly, then you can keep flying no matter what. So Epic is just a more advanced, performant, future-proofed design that is written in a language called Rust. BTC is written in C++, which I learned in college 25 years ago. It's a great language, but you kind of have to be very careful because it's easy to introduce bugs, and that's part of why the orange coin can't really move very fast. We use a newer language called Rust, where instead of saying, hey, computer, add this 1 to this 0, do it 7 million times, and then move the value over here. Imagine flipping individual switches versus using a drag and drop app builder that says, calculate this value and move the results over here. And, it's just a more advanced way of making software. So other points, I know we're getting close to the limit here. This has been awesome. You mentioned social credit. So in China, which is a great harbinger of what we can expect in our Western world through these types of systems, is that if you criticize the government or you use forbidden words, or you're deemed an antisocial person, then your money can be denied privileges. So you can't pay for a train ticket. You can't pay for the bus. Your carbon footprint is too high, so you can't purchase the beef. Go take that back and buy the plant-based burger. And also the surveillance. So what you buy, from whom you buy it, you're going to be monetized. You're going to be data mined. You're going to be subtly marketed to. We live in an era of predatory surveillance capitalism, where the customer or the consumer is the product, and you can just opt out of that completely as a wholesale solution. The other thing that's big for me is that when you use political money, when you use fiat currency that's essentially backed by violence, you're directly contributing to death and destruction through the continuation of this welfare warfare paradigm. And if you use the Canadian dollar, the American dollar, the euro, the whatever, then the things that your nation state does that you don't agree with, you are directly funding. And you're also transferring wealth from you and people that are poorer than you to people that are wealthier than you. If you go to a website called WTF Happened in 1971, that talks about the change.com, which talks about the change in wealth distribution and Gini coefficient, the people that own it all have dramatically gained in wealth, and the poor have stayed poor on the fringes and margin of survival for the most part, and then the middle classes have gotten crushed, not through any fault of their own. They work hard and they still do what they did before, but just the playing field has been subtly tilted because the powers that be, the intertwined nexus of state power and big business, big tech, big pharma, big union, big whatever, have kind of ganged up to use their power. And you can totally take that back by opting out of that system and voting with your wallet and acting according to your conscience. It's a more ethical and sustainable, more humane solution, I think.
Right. Okay. So, you've convinced me to at least get some of this stuff. How do I get some Epic Pay?
All right.
Or Epic Cash? Do I got to tell my employer to pay me in Epic Cash from now on, or?
Oh, when I swap windows, it goes on mute. So I'll just explain it, and we can do it after, because I'm on mobile and StreamYard doesn't play nice.
Okay.
So the website is buyepiccash.com, and that'll tell you how to convert from BTC or other assets. In about a month, it will be swappable with 800 other coins through the app. And about a month after that, it will be possible to purchase with debit and credit card. We are a volunteer project. I'm one of about 300 people in 70 countries. that we dedicate our time on a volunteer basis because we believe in the mission. And obviously, we've got skin in the game as well. And when Epic goes from a half a cent in 2020 to 12 cents in 2021 and 32 cents in 2022, and now $1 in 2023, we gain in purchasing power because inflation is working for us rather than against us. And then that creates a strong incentive to go spread the word. And, we all give away coins. If you go to epicfundme.com, we did Turkey earthquake relief. There was multiple kids in Philippines, Africa, surgeries, medical bills and whatnot that come up. We call ourselves the Freeman family, and we support each other through that type of stuff, which also shows the not just the utility, but also the use case and also the usage. Cool tech isn't of value to anyone if it's not actually used, and so we need to get out there. We also focus on making it easier. And one of the things that I think is really special about Epic is that just based on what you did here today, if you want to be, that makes you a Freeman, and you can be a part of the family. And we're building this thing together. So let's say you throw $100 in and you get 100 coins, and then we get up to Monero value. Well, now you have $17,500. That's enough to buy a car off of your $100 investment. Let's say we go to the price of BTC. That means your 100 coins are now, what is that, $25 million?
Yee. Yeah, baby, something like that. It's a godly amount.
Exactly. 2.5 million. 2.5 million. Yeah, you gotta think in terms of numbers of zeros. But anyway, $100 to 2.5. Now here's the other thing. Banks create money just like the Federal Reserve does. So a lot of people think that banks get money and then they loan out that money and they keep 10% in reserve or whatever. No, the way it actually works is they create money out of thin air from nothing by issuing you a loan for your house, your car, your whatever. So you have a dual channel system of currency creation that dilutes the value of the money, or currency rather, that we hold. So if the Federal Reserve and the Bank of Canada and CIBC can create currency, then dream with us here for a moment. Why can't Tim create the Bank of Moan and take his $2.5 million worth of Epic and create the Bank of Tim, and then issue himself a loan using his Epic as collateral? And so that system that I just described has been in development for over 5 years. And so what you're going to be able to do is wrap your Epic coins into tokens. Imagine sticking your one coin inside a FedEx envelope or putting your car inside a shipping container. So by wrapping your Epic coins onto other blockchains like Avalanche, like Ethereum, like Cardano, like Binance Smart Chain, you can interact with other users to say, okay, I don't want to sell my $2.5 million of coins. Why? Because if they keep going up, I lose out on the appreciation. Also, I bring forward a tax liability. So I have to, if I want to buy something for $100,000, I'm in a high tax bracket, I got to sell $200,000 worth of coins to have a net purchasing ability of 100,000, maybe even less. So what if you could take that same $200,000 worth of coins and issue yourself a loan for sorry, I got to go plug my phone in here, for 50% of that value, right? So we're not going crazy. The system is very solvent. There's an algorithmic central bank called Every Citizen's Reserve that will basically interact with you through smart contracts. Just making sure my phone went dark here for a sec. So it'll interact with you through smart contracts where you issue yourself an equity-based line of credit denominated in a crypto dollar called EUSD. And so at any time, right now it's 1-to-1, it's $1. So if you have one EUSD, you can get one Epic. If the price goes down to 50 cents, you get 2 Epic. If it goes to $4, then you get 0.25 Epic or whatever. So we have a yin yang system, two sides of the coin, where as Epic goes up higher and higher, then our holders just create more and more credit. And for every dollar of credit they create, that sucks $2 worth of Epic out of the system and it locks it up. So, as that snowball takes hold, you get to some pretty crazy numbers. So the value of gold, right? Money is an inverted pyramid structure called Exter's pyramid, where you have $10 billion at the base, or $10 trillion worth of gold at the base. And then you have base money and bank money and bonds all the way up to derivatives. And so whether you look at M0, M1, M2, M3, whatever, gold is 10 trillion. That would be 500,000 per Epic coins, per Epic cash coin. And fiat currency writ large is about 500 trillion, depending on how you define it. So that would be over $30 million for each one of these very scarce coins. So if they're $1 and they can go even to 0.1% of any of those things, and your ice cube is melting if you're holding value in other forms of assets, then the question really becomes not why Epic, but why not Epic?
Right. Well, I'll tell you, I'm kicking myself now because I think the last time I had you on the show, Epic was around 12 cents or 20 cents. And I'm like, okay, I got to get a hold of this, but I don't know. I couldn't quite figure it out or something. It wasn't as frictionless as I was hoping it would be at the time.
Well, that's why it was 12 cents. It's less friction now, and that's why it's $1.
Right.
So there's an exchange listing coming, a place out of Singapore that focuses on emerging markets, India and Philippines and Vietnam and Indonesia and places like that. They have 600,000 users a month, and they are adding us next month. And then there's also a service called Change Now that'll offer one-click swapping into 800 other currencies. So when it gets easier, then there will be more people in the boat, and because of that supply inelasticity, it really gets expensive. So right now today, you can get about over 20,000 Epic coins for 1 BTC. So if it's 3 times more scarce and the exchange rate is 20,000 to 1, then how long can that really last? Especially because Epic is 10 times faster. Right. It's a penny to send instead of $2 to $81, and you have the privacy. So these things are nothing also without awareness. So another thing that I think will be a major catalyst that hasn't even hit yet is that Epic is going to be the currency of the World Series of sports betting and 2 other World Series of events in Las Vegas.
Wow.
So $15,000 buy-in, the only currency they accept is Epic. So imagine as people understand that, well, I have to buy this Epic. If I buy it the week before the tournament, people wait until the last minute. That's going to be very expensive. I can just buy it now ahead of time, and then my cost ends up being cheaper to play in that poker game. Also, the people that are putting on that World Series of event, I got approached as the co-writer for a 2-season, 20-episode made for not television and not Netflix, but imagine an online streaming service of like Netflix for a show called Trillions. So imagine a TV show that can reach hundreds of millions of people. There's 330 million crypto owners. And so we want to reach them through entertainment, through education, through philanthropy. We've got Freeman University on Telegram. There's about 500 people on there where we teach each other about blockchain stuff. There's an accelerator program for small business. All in all, there's about 400 separate initiatives that are ongoing in the ecosystem. There's about 3 dozen startups that are building around Epic, and Epic itself is just one building block in an overall stack of 16 different assets. So I told you about the EUSD crypto dollar. The way that works is because of another token called ECR. The beautiful part about open source is that we can take every bit of code, every successful experiment. We can tweak the unsuccessful things that were not quite right, but they had promising concepts. We can take absolutely anything that exists on GitHub or that is a concept that has been tried in the market. So our strategy is to be a second mover, to be leading edge rather than bleeding edge. And that's how we avoid a lot of the blowups like Terra Luna, and learning that scam bank fraud man over at FTX is
Right.
a sham. You know, a lot of projects have been caught flat-footed based on an assumption that the SEC would be more permissible on this issue of securities law, and they're not. And so if you have, let's say, a $500 million commitment to a particular track, and it, you know, you've got hundreds of people going and it takes years to turn the boat around, then really you have a problem. And so we're just perfectly positioned based on the foresight of our design.
Awesome. Okay. Well, you've got me convinced. I'm going to try a little harder this time to get some of this Epic Cash. And you said buyepiccash.com is the place to go to learn how to go ahead and get that stuff. I'm going to try to get some stuff in my wallet here. You know, I missed the boat on Bitcoin. I missed the boat on so many things. I advised so many people to do things that they did and they got rich off of that I didn't do. And I feel like an idiot. So I'm gonna do this.
Do as I say, not as I do. Education is expensive, and the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, but the second best time is today.
Yes.
You had the open-mindedness and courage to confront new ideas a couple years ago in learning about Epic, and then now, you know, I mean, 20,000 to 1. Just as that rebalances. And the other thing is, if you buy Ethereum, there's nothing you can do to make that go better, faster. Like, you can't work at it. There's nothing you can do to help Ethereum. Blockstream doesn't care what you have to say, and there's no way you can help BTC. But here, I mean, there's 100 different Telegram groups. You know, your advocacy here through your voice that you have, anybody else that you know. If you think about it, because of two mathematical principles that determine the value of communications networks. One's called Metcalfe's law and the other's called Reed's law. When I tell you and then you tell somebody and then they tell somebody and we all tell three people, then you have this factorial explosion in the value, because if you and I have, if there's only two telephones or walkie-talkies in a village, then we can only call each other. But if you add a third one, now we can make more connections. We add a fourth, we can make more. Every time you add a connection, I think it doubles. I should probably check that math, because I always use the example and I think I always get it wrong. But ananyway, you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Yeah. Well, and what I love about this, Max, is that, you know, so much of the liberty movement, and I'm projecting here, so much of what I've done in terms of trying to get more liberty is all focused on stuff I can't control. I need, you know, I'm pointing externally at the government, at central banks, all these, you know, Orwellian Leviathan like forces that, look, let's face it, I could spend all my energy trying to fight these things and never make a dent in it. I could try to raise an army of liberty-minded people to take these Leviathans on.
You could be Ron Paul.
I could be Ron Paul and still not make a dent in the size of the government, right? Ron Paul is, you know, in a lot of ways, my liberty hero for the ideas he spread. But let's face it, he wasn't able to take the shackles off.
You want to hear a fascinating story? So he spoke at Bitcoin 2021, and I have always been a big fan too. And so I went up to him after he spoke, and they say never meet your heroes. You always want to believe the best in people. But I went up to him after his speech at the Bitcoin 2021 event, and I said, "Hey, Dr. Paul, nice to meet you. I've been a big fan of your work forever, and I'm pleased to tell you that I'm part of a group of hundreds of people worldwide that have been working for years to help provide a solution. You know, this end the Fed idea. You can do that today. We've got the solution. Are you interested to hear about it? No. Goodbye."
Right.
So I'm like, okay, I hear what you say, but I see what you do. And if you were wandering in the Sahara Desert without water for 40 years, and some tribesman comes up to you and says, "Hey, buddy, there's some water over that hill," would your first thing be no, thank you, or would it be where? Show me.
Yeah. Well,
So,
I guess it would depend how many times I've been told by some tribesmen that they had an answer, only to find out that I wasted my time.
that's a
And
very
they
fair
don't,
point.
right?
Yeah,
And
that's
Ron Paul
that's
is
a very fair
probably,
point.
it just in my short time in politics and my lowly stature compared to Ron Paul, I've been approached by so many people, and I've spent so much time listening to harebrained schemes that it's hard to to
Yeah,
suck the good ones from the bad ones. But
if you
uh,
can make anyone go from closed mind to open,
yeah,
then we'll keep talking, we'll keep singing our message day in, day out,
yeah,
for months, weeks, days, weeks, months, quarters, years, decades, and we'll keep doing it. And I
right,
understand there's a lot of bad actors out there, and we have a lot to prove. But how big do we have to get? How successful do we have to get? How many people have to start nodding their heads to say this is worth looking at? And even and even to look at it, I mean, one could be forgiven for being very skeptical and dismissive
yeah,
of cryptocurrency for what, the first 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. I mean, but it's
yeah,
13 years into this right now.
yeah,
So, I mean, you can't deny the numbers. If you overlay the growth curve of cryptocurrency adoption versus the internet itself back in the late 90s, cryptocurrency adoption is growing faster. And it's
right,
also more important. Not everybody needs the internet, but everybody needs money. So yeah, anybody like that you can get to listen and even spend 5 minutes. That's all it takes. Do you want states controlling your money? Do you want preservation of individual property rights? Do you want wealth transfer embedded into it? Do you want fractional reserve, fiat Ponzi deficit spending? I mean, the Federal Reserve M1 money supply from 1787 until 2001, I think it was, or 2007 maybe. I'd have to check, but it took over 200 years to grow the currency supply to 1 trillion, and then it got from 1 trillion to 4 trillion up until February 2020, and now it's over 20 trillion. So if you can make 5 times more currency units in 2 years, well, let's just keep pressing these buttons and making more money,
right,
right? When is it ever gonna stop? I mean, and it's if you look at Rome, I mean, or the Western Roman Empire versus the Eastern Roman Empire, changed the name, split it in 2 halves. One had sound currency and lasted as a cohesive thing 1,400 years beyond the other one that was doing the chicanery with the money. So this is too important to ignore. It really is.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Okay, well, you've definitely convinced me to place a bet on this. I mean, look, it's only upside as far as I can tell, right? I mean, this is the early days of Epic Cash. You're where Bitcoin was 10, 13 years ago, whenever it was when I was looking at it. In fact, you're like less ahead. You're only at $1 right now. When I was looking at it, it was $5. And what's the risk? That it goes to zero. I mean, like, the upside is so huge. I mean, I would have made, if I'd have put in $100 last time I interviewed you, I'd probably have $2,000 worth of Epic Cash right now. And so I don't want to let that happen again. I want to make sure
Yeah, well, actually, it's
next time
not.
I talk to you.
It's not that much. It would only be about $800. But we
Right.
did get up to $7 in December 2021. So at one point, it would have been what, like 14,000. something like that. Yeah, it's actually really affordable. We've got what is it? 129 countries going with full nodes, 2,300 cities. You're one of the first 1,500 people to download the Epic Pay app, and we got 250 reviews so far, all 5 stars. So so that's great. Yeah, and it's still basically unknown. So thank you for the hour invested today, and we'll sync up on Telegram, and I'll send you your first coin, and then we'll get you $100 or $10 or whatever, and then watch the baby seedling grow together.
Beautiful. I love it. And again, what I love about this is that I don't have to spend all my energy shutting down the central bank. I can just make it irrelevant to my life.
Ignore them.
Yeah, and ignore them. Yeah, and that's what I want to focus on now that I'm kind of out of the political arena, and liberty's of course super important to me, but now it's like, okay, how can I expand liberty in my own life, in the lives of my friends, my listeners, my family? That's what I'm focused on, and I think this is another tool in the tool belt on how to do that. So Max Freeman, thanks so much for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks. You can people that are listening can check it out at epic.tech on the web. Also our Telegram group, t.me/epiccash. And then what we can do, now you got me thinking, let's actually do a giveaway. So we'll figure out a certain number of Epic coins. Yeah, we've done like 5 of these so far, I think, with different channels. So what we'll do is set up a process where people that download and install the wallet and give us feedback about any bugs they encounter. I mean, it was early stage open source software, so there's always teething troubles. So we'll definitely spread the network that way.
Awesome.
We've got a website called Giver. Yeah, I should have mentioned that before the buying one. So we've got giverofepic.com, where you can just click a button and get a fraction of a coin sent to be able to play around with it.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Yeah. All right.
Cool.
We'll talk about that stuff offline, and thanks again so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tim.